The second Rambo film is very interesting. It's kind of taking Rambo back to the war, as it were. He's now being found in prison, given a second chance by Colonel Troutman, who is now able to give him a pardon of sorts if it means him going back into Vietnam, back where he has all those horrible memories, and now he's going to be able to do some good. He then is going to be able to go in there. At first glance, it seems like he's being set up to be able to do a rescue mission, saving some prisoners of war. But as it turns out, the entire situation is kind of a ruse. It's really just a publicity stunt being used to make the United States government look better in comparison by them saying, "Oh yeah, we're trying to find these men that have been missing for so long, and we're going to put the families to rest and that kind of thing, all their fears, that whatnot." But in reality, all that's happening is them just doing whatever they can to look like they're putting in work when nothing was actually going to happen. Lo and behold, Rambo ends up finding real POWs, and um, kind of the ongoing theme of the series, he kicks into what he's been trained to do. He's a master weapon, and he's been sharpened to take down pretty much any kind of situation. He goes about trying to rescue them, but the commanding officer or commanding personnel then pull out and say, no, it's not a rescue mission. You weren't actually supposed to find anyone, abandoning Rambo in his circumstances where he's just a man with a knife sitting in the middle of nowhere. He then has to become even better than before, taking down basically almost an entire camp of soldiers, being able to rescue all of the prisoners of war and then also make his way back to the base with all these soldiers. It gets crazy. It's personally my favorite probably of the entire series, except maybe the first one. He does some of the craziest things you've ever seen with explosive arrows, and you see him being a master of multiple types of weaponry, and eventually ends up doing what he's been bred to do, which is help Americans get out of a terrible situation and eventually be able to bring as many people home as he can. It's interesting seeing kind of the time take place. Each film is showing how it's addressing certain issues. The first one being just the Vietnam War and vets in general and how they're being treated, to the second one where it's going into him addressing the kind of war cleanup and how the interaction with the two countries is going and that kind of thing. Seeing the bureaucracy behind it that's not actually helping, and how you're still seeing how a vet is reacting to this kind of scenario. Phenomenal acting by Stallone, and the whole situation is just really, really cool to watch. How he reacts, how he takes people down. The whole movie is super fun, super exciting, and he only has a brief love interest that ends up kind of going sour near the end of the film. And it's just a really interesting take on this 80s action hero who, again, he's not doing crazy, elaborate things. He's doing like some pretty cool things, but nothing out of the ordinary. Like you could see a normal human being able to do them. And then he's not doing tons of jokes. He's not having tons of catchphrases. He's really very to himself. And you start to identify with the character more because he's so human. It's an amazing aspect of the Rambo character, John Rambo being this incredibly skilled man. He's just another guy. And as you go through, the third film then kind of amplifies it into an even more interesting scenario where you're seeing him having to actually rescue Colonel Troutman, the man who has been involved in the last two films, and he needs to go to Afghanistan and free him from Russian occupancy in Afghanistan. So it's a very weird movie because you're kind of seeing both sides of the conflict at the time. And you're seeing a little bit of them amplifying Rambo more and more. This is when I would say he's probably the most superhuman. He's doing crazy classic 80s action stuff in this third one. He's flying helicopters. He's driving tanks. It gets very, very almost comedic with how ridiculous it is. It's where you're going to see him with the giant turret where he's just taking people out or trying to blow up helicopters. And it's insane in full 80s mullet glory. So it's comedic, but also it's still awesome. You're still there for the whole time. And even as far as they do go with making it a little more stereotypical 80s action star, they only have a few real moments where it shows that, and the rest of it is still pretty much classic Rambo. Just a dude who is like a brick house of just pure muscle going around taking people out based on just the classic training that he's had. So it's really cool. They do some interesting things with the character. He's still... One thing you recognize is that there's not a real ongoing love interest, or he's not a James Bond who's like super suave and trying to find relationships. He's a broken man, and how he's reacting to all these crazy situations and war situations, you can see it still has a toll on him. Even if it's the only thing he knows how to do anymore, it's still hard. That being said, the second and third film are a lot more similar in tone than the first one, and are leaning farther away from it being as dramatic and as more classic 80s action films. Really great, really fun, a harsh, not, I would say a brutal hero, but one who understands the weight of his actions and doesn't do them lightly, be it how he doesn't take out certain people that have wronged him, or be it how he does have to be brutal and visceral and take out his enemies when it needs to happen, because ultimately it means him protecting other people. It's a really cool place that they take with the character, and you always get the sense of that no matter what circumstances Rambo is in, he's going to try and do the best he can for whoever he can, which is something I think certain 80s action heroes or classic action heroes, you sometimes get a sense of selfishness, but he's kind of just a man who only knows how to do one thing, and he'll try and do his best doing it and try to help the most people he can by doing it. And that shows so much in the second and third film. Fantastic, really awesome. This is the 80s trilogy of Rambo, and I think a lot of people would view this as the classic Rambo, and I personally found them phenomenal, really fun, really cool, awesome action. The acting is great, and by the end of it, you feel like you've gotten to know this character and are just happy to see him get a semblance of joy or happiness, or even just a facsimile of quiet in his life by the end of the film. Some form of rest for John Rambo. That then gets us into the modern Rambo films.